on the show with us. Congressman Bruce Westerman is back with us. Bruce, how are you this morning?
Doing well, Paul. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. So, what can you tell us about what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now?
Well, not a lot of productive stuff. There's obviously a lot going on, a lot of hearings, a lot of headline stories coming out. But as a Republican, not on the Intelligence Committee or the Judiciary Committee or I believe the O&G Committee, I'm kind of left out. I get whatever information the rest of the world gets as it's leaked out of the committee from Adam Schiff to the news media that makes whatever story they want to make out of it. But as far as things like getting budgets passed, getting the government funded, getting the Defense Authorization Act completed so that our military's strong, as far as getting trade agreements done and major legislation, I can tell you nothing's happening in Washington, D.C. The impeachment stuff's sucking all the oxygen out of the room. And it's sad to think where we could be as a country if we could actually focus on things that I think the American people are really wanting us to focus on instead of this continuous impeachment scenario that's been going on literally. As I was with President Trump this week, he said they were trying to impeach me before I even got elected. And for sure, when he did get elected, before he even was inaugurated, they were putting this impeachment scheme together.
Are Republicans kind of to the point where, you guys are rolling your eyes? I kind of feel like, there's supposed to be a vote and, I'm assuming they're formalizing some sort of rules, but they're not allowing the president to have due process. They're not going to let them even present the other side or even exculpatory evidence, which there's a lot of, by the way.
Yeah, well, they've created this, use the president's terms, a sham process where they are not letting Republicans subpoena and call witnesses, where they're saying that no information is supposed to leave these hearings, although they're leaking out selectively what they want said. I saw Tom Cotton in an interview a week or so ago, and he said it quite well. He said they do 10 hours of interviews and leak out 30 seconds of the most incriminating information they can put together on the president from 10 hours of interview. So you're seeing things like that, and then they bring this resolution to the floor to say, okay, we realize we've been doing this in secret. It's unfair. We didn't vote on setting up an impeachment inquiry. So then they bring a resolution to the floor to do an impeachment inquiry, basically so they can vote on doing what they've been doing, not creating any kind of a fair process like Nixon had, a process like Clinton had, a process like federal judges get when we go through impeachment. If you can look at this from a process standpoint and say it really stinks. There's not any transparency. They're not being fair. But like when I was with President Trump earlier in the week, he said the thing about it is they're coming after me for something that wasn't wrong. So they're making up things, saying I did wrong that weren't wrong, and that's kind of the position he's taking on it. Is it's bad enough the process they're doing, but the bottom line is they're coming after him for something that was he feels like was a perfectly normal thing for him to do.
So we had the news. We're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman, by the way, folks. We had the news last week this time that the Department of Justice had expanded the investigation into the origins of the Russia investigation into a criminal matter. And, I saw where you had the Attorney General and this U.S. Attorney, John Durham. They actually got to meet with some foreign heads, intelligence agencies, Italy. They did that towards the end of September. And I guess for what I'm hearing, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman Westerman, is that, there really was some crimes that were committed that got us to this point from former Obama administration officials. And I was having a
Oh,
conversation.
absolutely.
I was.
I mean, we know that from the Mueller report, from the Steele dossier, from uh, all the things that the Clinton campaign, the Democrats were doing before the 2016 election. And I've said all this long, Paul. I said if there is still justice in this country, if they keep investigating this, I think the real criminals are going to be found out. Now, I don't know what the Justice Department has, what kind of charges they'll be coming out with. Even, meeting with President Trump at the White House this week, he said he's, keeping distance from that. But I think we're all expecting that they're finally going to come out with something that will hopefully bring justice to those who have abused the system.
Yeah.
And James Comey, when I first got here, I heard about what a great guy he was, and some things that we had to vote on in Congress, even with like these FISA courts, and going briefings, and they show us how having the FISA courts have helped stop terrorist attacks, and you can't deny the benefits that the country experienced because of the actions we took after 9/11 in trying to stop terrorists. But for them to talk about how all the sideboards that are there, and how and in theory, if it operated like it should, people's privacy and Fourth Amendment rights shouldn't be violated. But then for just to find out that Comey was involved in creating a FISA warrant based on this fake dossier, that does a lot of damage with stuff like that. And I'm anxious to see what the Justice Department comes up with.
I am as well. We're talking again with Congressman Bruce Westerman. My fear, though, I mean, I'm like you. I think that there's going to be charges coming out, and I'm glad that you said, when you were talking with the president earlier, that he said he was going to be, he's keeping his distance from that. That's good because but it doesn't really matter because they're going to claim that it's a banana republic and he's going after his political enemies. We know how the mainstream media lies. At the same time, that we have to have a commitment to justice here. But I guess I'm worried. Go ahead.
Have you ever noticed how what they harp on is it's almost like they make a big scene and point the finger at somebody else to cover up what they've done. I mean, this whole thing with the Ukraine. When I saw the interview with Joe Biden on TV bragging, I mean, not hearsay, not somebody that wasn't on a call saying what happened on a call, but the guy, as Vice President of the United States, said that he went to the Ukraine and told them that if they didn't fire this prosecutor, he was going to withhold their money, and told them, if you don't believe me, call the president. And then he was bragging about how within 6 hours they had fired the guy. I mean, the exact, blatant abuse of what they're saying President Trump did, Joe Biden did. And it seems to be fine that Joe Biden did it. And, honestly, when we talk about foreign policy, we use that as leverage. But the mainstream media started the story here with you can't expect anything in return for foreign aid that you give. Now they're trying to make this out like President Trump was using it for political gain. No, he was using it to try to stop corruption. The problem is Joe Biden and his son were part of the corruption.
Yeah.
So since the president tried to, he was talking with a foreign leader about how to stop corruption, they're turning that back on him, that he was using it for political gain. So they create their narrative. They talked about Russian collusion in the 16 election, but then you find out they're using a foreign spy to collect or to create a false report about a candidate in the U.S. election, and they're spying on a guy that was a candidate for president who ended up being president. So there seems to be a real double standard.
Yeah, and according to reports, I mean, the Blaze has reported this. I mean, we gave the Ukraine like $7 billion that just vanished because the country was so corrupt. And, so the president, obviously, we don't want to give them more money unless they clean. And, of course, that President Zelensky guy, he ran on an anti-corruption platform. And if you read the transcript of the call, which the Democrats don't want to believe that that's what happened, but it is. It's the transcript. The president's like, hey, I think maybe you've still got some of the same people in your administration. You need to be careful. And I also say this, Congressman Westerman. I mean, the same thing's true for Donald Trump here in America, because there's a ton of deep staters around this president that have just refused and covertly undermined everything this man's trying to do in representing the American people and the change that we wanted to see in Washington.
Yeah, we can go back and look at the defense authorization bill that provided the foreign aid money to the Ukraine, and it tells you in that bill that was contingent on stopping corruption over there. So, I mean, there's one angle you could say the president was actually working at the discretion of Congress in administrating the law as how it was passed in the Defense Authorization Act. So it's easy on complicated issues to tell a story from the angle you want it told, especially when you've got, as Trump calls him, Shifty Shift, leaking the information that he wants leaked, and you've got Nancy Pelosi flying cover for him, creating the rules as she goes along, and I don't think it's the fair, transparent process that Americans want to see. I think they want us to work on the issues and do things to keep this economy growing, which it's, if my platform was like the platform that the Democratic presidential presidents are adhering to, I would want a diversion too, so the American people wouldn't see it.
No, that's a very good point.
If with the economy doing what it's doing, President Trump was talking this week about how in the 8 years of George Bush, I think the median income went up $400 or $500. In the 8 years of Barack Obama, it went up $400. The first 2.5 years of his administration, the median income went up $5,000. That doesn't include the $1,700 to $2,000 of extra income from the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, nor the increased spending you get or money you have because of lower energy prices. So people don't want to talk about the success of the economy. They don't want to pass things like trade agreements that would make the economy go even stronger. But I think the American people see through that.
I completely agree. I think they do too. I think the president's popularity is much larger than the polls suggest. The media will let anybody know. I think that's another reason they know he can't, or he's got a very good chance of winning at least in 2020. Real quick, where were you, Congressman Westerman, and what's your thoughts on the military strike against the ISIS leader, the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi over the weekend?
Yeah, I was very excited to hear about that. I actually got a classified briefing on it yesterday or the day before, where they, the Central Command General and Secretary of Defense, they had all the head of the CIA. They were all there telling us, what happened and how it went down, with pictures and videos. I see in the paper today that a lot of that's been released to the public. And then when I was with the president earlier in the week, he went into detail talking about how that happened, and it's just it's a testament to the great men and women who serve in the United States Armed Forces, and also those in intelligence agencies, and how they found the guy out there hiding in his little hideaway, and the precision and the force and the planning and everything that went into taking him out, and how few outside casualties there were, and how there was no loss of American life in that. It was it's really a great commentary on the U.S. Defense Forces and intelligence agencies.
Have you heard about the dog Conan, who was involved in that operation? And then so the Daily Wire came out with this photo, clearly photoshopped photo of the president putting a medal on the dog. and it's been the subject of memes. All the people on the right are memeing about this dog. They really love this dog, who's this hero. And then the mainstream media, because the president retweeted the photo, they're claiming that the president was trying to hoax everybody and say that he gave the dog a medal when he didn't. And yet it was clear, like, it's clearly photoshopped. He knew it was photoshopped. I mean, it's just amazing how he triggers people, you know?
Well, I know. I think there is something to Trump derangement syndrome. I think he's really in people's head. But he was talking about the dog a lot when I was with him this week, and he mentioned that he had tweeted a picture of the dog, and he said it was the second most retweeted tweet of the whole time he's been on Twitter. And he's the guy's actually got a great sense of humor. He said it's second behind Kofifi, and he said there's a great story behind Kofifi, but he wouldn't tell it to us the other day. But and I don't know if the what all's been said about the dog, but he actually told us how the dog got injured in the raid. And I told him that I told my wife that morning I was going to be with him at the White House. She said, "Well, tell him he needs to get a first dog." And that's what I mentioned to him, Mr. President. My wife said it'd be good if you could get a first dog. That people would love that, but I don't know if he'll be getting one anytime soon or not.
Yeah, that is a rare thing. He doesn't actually have a dog, but who knows? Maybe he'll get a shepherd type of breed like this dog,
maybe,
Conan.
Maybe he could get this hero dog.
Yeah.
But, dogs like that are trained to do certain work. They may not be the most congenial dog to have around the White House.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe they could keep the press corps in line.
Maybe he could find the leakers that are around, sniff them out. Real quick though, did he tell you what the injury was to the animal? Can you share that with us?
Well, that was also in the classified briefing. So if it's not in the media, I'm not gonna be the first to.
Okay.
And I don't know why it would be classified, but
well, it may be out there. I haven't read. I mean, it probably is, but who knows? So, but I appreciate your caution there. Congressman Bruce Westerman, it's always great to have you on. I really appreciate firsthand accounts talking with the president. I'm jealous. And I appreciate the work they're doing. I know you got to stand tough, though, because the Democrats won't leave. They, like you said, they won't do the business of the American people. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, and that's the most frustrating thing about this job is, I want to get work done. I want to get budgets passed and do it through the appropriate process. I've got legislation for health care, legislation to help the environment, legislation that I've been working on immigration issues, things that the American people want to see addressed. As a member of Congress, I want to see it addressed. As an American citizen, I want to see it addressed. And it's extremely frustrating when the only thing that seems to matter is the 2020 presidential election, and my colleagues across the aisle and their leadership with Pelosi's the one that this all comes back on. That's all they want to focus on. So I hope the voters send her a message, and send the squad a message, and also send the president and those of us who are trying to get work done up here a message in the 2020 election. And that message is America is a great country, and we're going to make it better, and we're going to work hard, and we're going to do the business of the people. That's the message that I hope comes out in the 2020 election.
Congressman Bruce Westerman, it's always great, sir. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
You too, Paul.